There's a battle happening in your mind right now. Not loud, not obvious, but constant. And most of the time, you don't even realize you're in it. Because it doesn't look like a battle. It looks like thoughts. Normal thoughts. Familiar thoughts. The kind that feel like you. But they're not as neutral as they seem. Some of them pull you forward. Others quietly pull you back. Some build clarity. Others create confusion. Some bring peace. Others drain it, slowly, silently, consistently. You don't lose peace all at once. You lose it one thought at a time. And the danger is this, because the thoughts are quiet, you don't question them. You just believe them. Let's make this real. You wake up. Nothing dramatic has happened. No crisis. No major problem. But your mind starts moving. What if today goes wrong? I'm already behind. I should be doing more. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. They feel reasonable. So you don't challenge them. You accept them. And once you accept them, they start shaping how you feel. Now there's pressure, tension, a quiet heaviness, not because something happened, but because something was believed. This is the silent battle, not between you and your circumstances, but between truth and what your mind keeps repeating. And here's what makes it dangerous. It doesn't ask for permission, just runs. Thought after thought, assumption after assumption. And if you don't interrupt it, it builds momentum. One thought leads to another. Another leads to a feeling. That feeling leads to a reaction. And before you realize it, your entire state has shifted. Not because reality changed, but because your thoughts did. Your life is not shaped by what happens to you. It's shaped by what you keep agreeing with. Let that sit, because agreement is powerful. You don't have to say something out loud to agree with it. You just have to stop questioning it. And most of the time, that's exactly what happens. Thoughts come in. You assume they're true, and they start directing everything else. Now, here's where it gets deeper. Not every thought in your mind comes from clarity. Some come from fear, some from past experiences, some from insecurity, some from pressure, and yet they all sound like your voice. So you trust them, even when they're misleading you. Just because a thought feels true doesn't mean it is. But if you never question it, you'll live as if it is. And that's how the battle is lost quietly, not through big decisions, but through small, unchallenged thoughts. Now think about this. How many times have you believed, I'm not doing enough? I'm fallen behind. I'll never really change. Not because someone told you, but because your mind repeated it enough times that it felt real. And once it felt real, you started living from it. You held back. You doubted yourself. You lost momentum. All because of something that was never actually proven true. This is why awareness matters. Because you cannot fight a battle you don't know you're in. And right now, most people are not losing to reality. They're losing to unchecked thoughts. Thoughts that create pressure, create fear, create limitation, without ever being examined. Now here's the shift. You don't need to control every thought. That's impossible. But you do need to stop automatically agreeing with them. Because the moment you pause, the moment you question, the moment you step back, you break the pattern. Not every thought deserves your agreement. That one truth alone can change how you experience your entire day. Because now you're no longer passive. You're aware. You're observing. You're choosing. And that changes everything. But here's the challenge. The battle doesn't happen when things are calm. It happens in real time. It happens in real time. When you're stressed, when something triggers you, that's when the thoughts come fastest, strongest, most convincing. And that's where most people fall back into automatic patterns. Not because they want to, but because they don't recognize what's happening. So in the next part, we're going to slow this down. We're going to expose the exact pattern these thoughts follow. How they move from subtle to overwhelming. And why, if you don't interrupt them early, they take over your entire state. Because once you see the pattern, you can finally stop getting pulled by it and start taking control of what you allow to stay. So let's slow this down. Because once you can see the pattern, the battle stops feeling random and starts becoming something you can interrupt. Here's how it actually works, not in theory, but in real life. It starts with a single thought. Small, subtle, almost unnoticeable. What if this doesn't work? I'm already behind. That wasn't good enough. Nothing extreme, nothing dramatic, but it doesn't stay alone. Because your mind doesn't just think, it builds. One thought leads to another. If this doesn't work, then I'll fall behind. If I fall behind, then I'll miss my chance. If I miss my chance, then everything falls apart. And just like that, a single thought becomes a chain. This is the pattern. Thought, number, terkartion, numbertion, your reaction. Let's break it down. The thought appears, neutral at first. Then comes interpretation, what you decide that thought means. Died, that's bad. This is bad. This is a problem. This says something about me. And that interpretation creates emotion. Now you feel pressure, anxiety, fear, tension. And once emotion enters, reaction follows. You rush, you overthink, you avoid, you shut down, not because the thought was powerful, but because the interpretation made it so. It's not the thought that controls you. It's the meaning you attach to it. Let that sink in. Because this is where most people lose the battle. They try to stop thoughts. But that's not the real issue. The issue is what happens after the thought appears. The automatic interpretation. The assumption that if I think it, it must be true. Your mind is not neutral. It's biased, not against you intentionally, but shaped by everything you've experienced. Past failures, past pressure, past fear. So when a thought appears, your mind doesn't interpret it objectively. It interprets it through those patterns. That's why the same situation can create completely different thoughts in different people. One person thinks, this is a challenge. Another thinks, this is a threat. Same reality, different interpretation, different outcome. You don't react to reality. You react to the version of reality your mind creates. And that version is not always accurate. But if you don't question it, you'll live as if it is. Now let's go one level deeper. And familiarity creates belief. If your mind has repeated a certain pattern long enough, it stops feeling like a thought. It starts feeling like truth. I'm always behind. I'm not consistent. I can't change. Those don't feel like thoughts anymore. They feel like facts. But they're not facts. They're repeated interpretations. Just because you've thought something many times doesn't make it true, but it does make it convincing. And that's the trap. Because now, you don't just have thoughts, you have internal narratives, stories you keep telling yourself, and those stories shape your identity. I'm the kind of person who struggles. I'm the kind of person who overthinks. I'm the kind of person who can't stay consistent. And once identity forms, the pattern strengthens. Because now your mind doesn't just think, it confirms. It looks for evidence to support what it already believes. And suddenly, every small mistake becomes proof. Every delay becomes confirmation. Every struggle becomes identity. You don't just think your way into patterns. You believe your way into them. And belief drives repetition, which drives more belief. And that's how the cycle locks in. Thought, interpretation, emotion, reaction, reinforcement, repeat. Now the battle isn't occasional, it's constant. Automatic. But here's the shift. If the pattern has a structure, it also has entry points. Not by controlling every thought, but by stepping in between the stages. Between interpretation and emotion, between emotion and reaction. That's where freedom begins. But it requires something most people don't practice, awareness in real time. Because once the emotion is strong, the reaction is already close. So the earlier you interrupt, the easier it becomes. And in the next part, we're going to make this practical. 5 simple switches you can use to break this pattern as it's happening. Not later, not after you've already reacted, but in the exact moment the thought appears. Because that's where the battle is won. Not by fighting harder, but by interrupting earlier. So now this is where the battle actually changes, not when your thoughts disappear, but when you stop letting them run unchecked. Because the goal is not silence, the goal is awareness. Thoughts will still come. Fast, unexpected, convincing. But now, you respond differently, and that's what breaks the pattern. So here are 5 simple switches you can use in real time. Not perfectly, but consistently. Switch 1 from automatic, aware. The moment a thought appears, you notice it, not after it builds, not after it affects your mood. At the beginning, you don't say, "This is true." You say, "This is a thought." That small shift creates distance, and distance breaks automatic agreement. Switch 2 from believe, question, ask. Instead of accepting the thought immediately, you challenge it, not aggressively, just honestly. "Oh, wait a minute, is this actually true? Is there another way to see this?" Because most thoughts go unchallenged, and that's why they gain power. A thought only controls you when you stop questioning it. Switch 3 from spiral, stop the chain. Remember the pattern. Thought nimperpertestern. Emotion, you reaction. You interrupt it early, before it builds, before it stacks. Real life. You think, "I'm behind." Instead of letting it expand into 10 more thoughts, you stop it there. You don't follow it. You don't feed it. You cut the chain. Switch 4 from identity, not moment. The mind loves to generalize. "I always do this. I'm just like this. This is who I am." You interrupt that immediately. This is just a moment, not a pattern, not an identity, a moment. Because identity makes things feel permanent, moments keep things manageable. You are not your thoughts. You are the one observing them. Let that land, because it separates you from everything happening in your mind. Switch 5 from reaction, chores. This is the turning point. You don't react automatically. You choose intentionally. What is a better response right now? Not the perfect response, just a better one. Pause, breathe, step back, delay action. Because even a small pause creates space. And space is where control returns. You don't need to win the battle in your mind. You need to stop losing it automatically. That's the shift. Now zoom out. When you start using these switches, something begins to change. The thoughts don't disappear, but they lose authority. They don't control your state as easily. They don't spiral as fast. They don't define you as deeply. And slowly you start experiencing something new. Clarity, not because your life is perfect, but because your mind is no longer chaotic. You begin to catch negative thought patterns earlier. Feel less emotional intensity from them. Respond instead of react. Separate truth from assumption. Experience more internal peace. Not instantly, but consistently. And consistency requires everything. Here's the truth you need to hear clearly. You are not losing your peace because of your life. You're losing it because of what's happening unnoticed in your mind. And now, it doesn't have to stay unnoticed, because awareness changes the game. Once you see the pattern, you stop being controlled by it. And once you stop being controlled by it, you start experiencing real freedom. You don't have to believe every thought you think. Right now, you can choose differently. The next time a thought appears, don't accept it instantly. Don't follow it automatically. Pause, notice, question, choose. That's where the battle begins to shift. If this message spoke to you, do one thing right now. Go down to the comments and type, "I choose what I believe," not as motivation, as a decision. And if you know someone who constantly feels overwhelmed by their thoughts, share this with them, because they don't need silence. They need awareness. If you want more simple, practical, life-changing truth, subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because you don't have to stay stuck in the same patterns in your mind. You can step out of them. I'll see you in the next one.